I always wanted to have a big family. I thought I would have a big family. And then when it didn't appear that was going to happen, I kind of given up on the idea. I became very self-absorbed. I very much became living for myself, living for my world. And then in that period of time, through failures and trials and failures, it was there that I encountered the Lord in a way that I never thought I would.
Hey friends, welcome back to our Advent series. We are going into the third week of Advent here at the Diocese of Houma-Thibodaux. My name is Megan Martin, and today I am joined by Jamie Gaudet. Welcome to the show. We're excited to have you. Today we are going to talk a little bit about the experience that Mary and Joseph must have encountered as they entered closer to the miracle of Christmas. As we draw closer and closer to Christmas, we just want to kind of enter into what they must have experienced during those days. So Jamie, I'm so excited to have you with us. Can you just introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Jamie Gaudet, like you said. I'm originally from New Orleans.
Okay.
But I've been in Houma since 2002.
Wow, okay.
I'm a wife, mother of 4. I'm a nurse practitioner by day.
Beautiful.
And I think the most exciting thing about today is as I've gotten older, the opportunity to just dig deeper into my faith, beyond the superficial part of it, what we've known and what we memorized as children. That's the most exciting thing to me. So in my spare time, I love Bible studies.
Amazing.
I love sports. So I like to witness to kids on football fields and basketball courts, baseball fields. And it's just a joy to be here today and discuss Mary and Joseph and their journey.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. I'm so excited for making the time to be here with us.
Sure.
As we draw closer and closer to Christmas and as we kind of like round out the Advent season, I think that something I am often contemplating is how inconvenient the Christmas story is.
Yeah.
You know, I think that we brush over the fact of how inconvenient it was and how difficult it must have been, because I think we've heard the story over and over and over. Why do you think that we associate this nativity scene with like this cozy, warm experience?
I think if it feels good, don't you?
Yeah.
And I think, generation after generation, we pass down stories.
Sure.
And those details that might be a little more uncomfortable, we tend to minimize them.
Oh, yeah.
And if every generation kind of minimized the inconvenience, the uncomfortable part, because it doesn't feel as good.
Yeah.
We like things that feel good and look pretty. It's just the culture that we live in. But we have to remind ourselves that Christ himself was so counterculture. Then we have a second to really think about it. It doesn't surprise us that there is an inconvenience factor,
Sure.
a not as pretty factor, an uncomfortable factor that plays into this nativity story and journey. So I think the reason, not only because it's been passed down for so many years and we just lose details and any story that's passed down, but especially the more uncomfortable ones, because we like pretty, we like soft, we like feel good.
Absolutely. That is so true. My gosh. I cannot agree more. And I think when we think about the story of Christmas and even leading up to the story of Christmas, right? What Mary and Joseph must have gone through.
Girl.
I mean, just inconvenience after inconvenience and terror after terror.
That's what I was going to say. Fear.
Yeah.
I was going to say fear.
Just all of those things, experiencing those things. Can you talk a little bit just about what they might have experienced leading up to?
Well, let's think about this.
Yeah.
So we have a very young girl, that's been given this enormous responsibility. And it's a blessing and a gift to be chosen. But she even acknowledged the fact that she was lowly and unworthy feeling, right? But she's given this enormous responsibility. And in that time, the time that they were living, women were not prized possession.
Right.
They were very, very, very much property. And with the slightest little hiccup, they could be ostracized, they could be killed. I mean, there's a lot of stress that goes into getting this word that you were going to carry to Savior the world.
Yeah.
And then to trust that Joseph would get the same message to protect her, but then what was he feeling? I just think fear is the thing that comes into my mind the most initially. In our minds, we want to say that Mary was just thrilled about it from Jump Street.
Right.
She gets the word, she's like, oh, I'm not worthy, but no, yes, you are. Okay, I'm worthy, everything is great. But I dare say that it was not like that for her at all.
Yeah.
The more I learn about those Middle Eastern times, those biblical times, it was probably fear-ridden for her.
Absolutely. I do think so. And even Mary being without sin and Mary trusting the Lord, like there are still going to be those emotions of just like, how is this going to happen? And I trust you, Lord, but how are you going to protect me? And
Think
how
about
are
this.
all
I don't
these
mean to
things
interrupt
going
you,
to
but think about this. We live in a day and time where we know how the story ends.
right?
We have the benefit
Right.
of Jesus' life, death, resurrection, promise. She didn't have that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So even now today, when we're given a conviction or a word, and we have to live in that, do we know how the story ends? It's probably easier for us to trust.
Sure. And I think just thinking about like all of those things that like at the beginning of the pregnancy, like all of the fear and all of the unknown and all of the unsurety going into that, and then leading up to this miracle of Christmas and knowing that she's now 8 months, 9 months pregnant and she's getting ready to deliver the Son of God. She knows all of these things. She's like walked in this pregnancy, but she has been exiled from a land that she is familiar with. She has been taken out of her comfort zone. She is with this man who she loves, but who, I mean, they're children. They don't know each other that well.
They don't know each other.
And they're on this journey together to a foreign land, to a place that's unfamiliar. And when they get there, they're met with nothing.
And I've read a bunch of commentary on this because, again, I didn't really have the desire to go deeper into my faith until I really got into my 40s and really wanted to dig deeper into that. Now, Joseph is from the David lineage, right? Bethlehem is the city of David. So the Jewish people, at least what I've read, they were a very hospitable culture and still are. So when I first heard the story, it was like everybody was rejecting them. There's no room, there's no room, there's no room. I don't know if I believe that it was like such rejection as much as it is there's just so many people in the area. I don't know that people were ugly to them, maybe even a little sad that they didn't have room for them.
Sure.
And the whole idea of, we're about to have a baby, let's get on a donkey and drive or walk 80 miles through various terrain. And Bethlehem is like known as a hilltop city, so they got to climb up to get. The whole thing is a lot, but you leave, like you said, Nazareth, sweet, comfortable. I know all my people. To go over there hoping that somebody would honor the lineage and just be hospitable to us. And even if they wanted to be, there's just no real room.
Right.
So you can use our extra room.
Right. Our barn, our cave, where the animals live, where the animals feed.
Right.
And I think that it's been it's been like cutesy. I think as a culture, we just have like this real ability to like commercialize things, and I
make
think,
things comfortable.
Right.
So want to make things
digestible. Exactly.
I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. I don't want you to put you in a situation where it might stir up any emotion that's not happy.
Right.
And that's so not Jesus.
No.
And so not him. He says, wait, what? This is culture? Opposite.
Right.
Opposite. You're looking for me to be born in a palace because I'm a king?
Yeah.
Opposite day.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah, it's just not what anybody was expecting, and much less, like, I'm sure it's not what Mary and Joseph were expecting. No. Like, when she hears that she is carrying the Son of God, when Joseph hears that Mary is carrying the Son of God, I'm sure that they weren't like, well, you know what? We're going to go down to Bethlehem and have this baby in a manger.
No, they're probably doing some provisions. Lord's going to make provisions.
Yeah.
I'm going to get down there and they're welcoming me.
Right.
They are we don't have room for you.
Yeah. And like led them exactly where they were supposed to be, born into poverty. I think that is one of the pieces of this story that is so powerful to me. I was on a mission trip one time, and someone shared a quote with me that you cannot fully encounter Christ until you have encountered the poor, because he was born into poverty. And I had never thought about that before, of that idea of Jesus was born into poverty. And I think that's what really kickstarted like this whole process of thinking about how destitute this situation was, because I just don't think it's something we think about.
And I think a lot of times in our own lives, when we feel like we're at that destitute point, we're at the lowest of the low, we're broken as we can be, everything that we think was supposed to happen or is important is gone, it's there that we encounter Christ in the most beautiful way.
100%.
It's there. And so you're right, it's surprising, but then I think as you grow in faith and you get deeper and your relationship becomes more intimate, you think that's how it's supposed to be. He's waiting for us to get to that point of letting everything else go, being considered poor culturally, even if it's not physically, but just letting go of all the extra, making it simple. and giving him a chance to work. And when I think of his birthday, the day that he was born, I think simplicity. I think calm. Because I think all the extra stuff, you finally find a place. It's not what you thought it was going to be, probably. They probably thought, again, there'd be provisions made. Somebody would walk out and greet him in the street and say, this is where we've been waiting for you. This is where you're supposed to go. After all that's gone and they're finally settled, even if it is in a stall, all that other stuff doesn't matter. And I think that's the message of Christ. All that other stuff doesn't matter. Love me, love each other, and I'm going to work the details out.
Absolutely.
And if we can get that across as we're preparing for the birth of Christ, I'm guilty too. We get caught up in everything extra.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
Do you make a time for it to just be about him? And if not, what a perfect time.
Yeah. Even if Advent has looked hectic and chaotic and less than simplified up until this point, I think now, especially like entering into these final days, is the perfect time to just like bring that simplicity of heart back, and just recognize like that is what it's all about.
That's a beautiful invitation.
Yeah. And from the feminine perspective, going back to Mary's experience and just thinking about being 6 to 8 months pregnant and what you'd like to be doing in that moment. I'm sure it's not what she was actually doing.
I'm going to have to say, I've been there 4 times,
Yeah.
6 to 8 months pregnant. And yeah, I'm sure the last thing that she was wanting her fiance to say is, hey, we're going to go ahead and get on the back of this camel or this donkey and we're going to ride 80 miles south so that we can go get counted.
Yeah.
Now, in that time, her only answer is, okay.
Right.
But in her mind, I bet she was saying, is there not another way?
Right.
Do I not get some kind of dispensation
Yep.
for carrying the Lord,
Right.
But no, I bet she was tremendously uncomfortable. And then how long did they, I've read so much commentary about this. How long did it take? How many miles did they go in a day? When they're sleeping, where are they sleeping?
Right.
Not on a posturepedic mattress, Right. So I think all those things, and this is where the courage, the faith, the resiliency, the discipline, those are the things that come up in my mind when I think about the actual journey.
Right.
They had to stay the course.
Right.
They knew where they had to be. Joseph was being a true leader, and Mary was being just the perfect example of submission and
So docile. Yeah.
Yes.
So docile. And I think that journey that they encounter, like that is like so representative of our own journeys, like not only in life, but in Advent.
Yeah.
I think that we've been on this journey now for a few weeks, and we can kind of see those stops like along the road. We can start to see where we might have taken rest or where we might have gotten distracted and where we might have come up against obstacles the same way that the Holy Family did on their road to Bethlehem.
For sure.
And so I think we're kind of at that point now where we can kind of look back and take inventory of that journey, but we can also enter deeper in, even if that hasn't looked
Right.
exactly
And if you
how
have taken a stop, and I think this is so important, if you have taken a stop, if you have become distracted, if it has looked more commercial this Advent season than you wanted to, it's absolutely the perfect time to just pump the brakes.
Right.
And say, I want to go back. I haven't lit my Advent wreath in my house since the first week. Okay, catch up. Don't continue on the path just because. Once you have that recollection or that realization that it can be different and it should be different, the Lord is saying, then make it different.
Right.
That's the Holy Spirit sometimes.
Yeah. And I think something that you've been saying since we started this conversation is how unexpected things were, right? Like it was not what they were expecting. It was completely different than they had in mind. And is that not the story of all of our lives? Like our expectations and our realities are often just so different.
Yeah.
But the reality that most of the time it's exactly what we need, right? Especially if we are like in tune with the Lord, if we are in relationship with Him, if we are relying on Him, those things usually will work out.
And even though we fight them,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
because we as people control as much as we can, and then when we surrender, or even if we fight to the end, it doesn't work like we wanted to or we thought it would. It worked out exactly the way it's supposed to.
Right. And I think as we journey with Mary and Joseph, I think it comes to mind how difficult it was. Like what was asked of them was incredibly difficult, not just spiritually difficult, like bearing the Son of God in your household, but but also the physical and the human difficulties that they faced along the way to get there was no small feat. And I think that oftentimes we think that because we live a life with Christ, it is going to be beautiful and rainbows and butterflies and it's just going to be perfect and there's not going to be any hiccups. But the reality is that that's just not our story.
It will be.
It will be. It will be.
But people see the end result, and I think this nativity story, they focus on the birth, the manger, and the stars, and the beautiful. But you're right, leading up to that was a lot of physical demands. And like we talked about before, discipline, determination, faith, courage, all the things. And when things get hard for us to get to the beautiful, we need to be able to show those same attributes in our own lives, trusting in the fact that God promises to make good for those that love him. He has a plan for us to prosper us, but we have to do our part too. There's a participatory part.
Right.
And I think you made a really great point there, that physically there was a lot asked of Mary and Joseph. It wasn't just all beautiful babies and bright stars.
Right.
There was a lot going into that.
And I think we can relate to that in our own lives. I know that in my own life, when I started this journey with the Lord, I did not expect it to be as hard as it is. I did not expect being faithful to the Lord to be as difficult as it sometimes can be. And I don't think that I understood that saying yes to a life with Christ also meant saying yes to certain sufferings and certain crosses to bear. Have you experienced that in your own life? Like the journey is
sure.
difficult but beautiful.
Oh, for sure. I think that's the crux of who I am now. There was a time in my life where I said, I checked all the boxes. Outwardly, everything looked beautiful, and I was checking all the boxes, and it wasn't until I was brought to my knees and truly encountered the Lord in that moment that I recognized, hey, there's so much more to this. And I try to encourage everybody I meet, embrace the fact that you struggle.
Yeah.
Embrace the fact that it's not always easy. What do you do with that doubt, that fear? What do you do with that? You bring it back to the Lord, just like Thomas did, right? You bring it back to him and say, this is where I am. And then I feel like he says, I've been waiting for you. I know that. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for not going along with the world tells you, because you're going to find people to say whatever you want to hear, right? Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for not just being okay with the culture. Thank you for standing up for me, standing with me, because I'm never going to leave you. And I think that's the most beautiful part. And as we prepare for the birth of Christ, it's a fine time for us to look, reevaluate our life. And I can't say that enough. Reevaluate our life and our priorities. And if we need to make some changes, hey, I just know the Lord is sitting there, arms wide open, eyes big. I have been waiting for you. I have believed in you, and I have known I have so much I want to share with you. Just come back. Stop being distracted with all that stuff.
That's so beautiful. That's so good.
Yeah.
I think we've talked a lot about Mary's experience and kind of her journey. But what must that have been like for Joseph in all of this? Like I think as a man, their role as like protector and safeguard and provider, and coming up short, or feeling like he was coming up short in like those areas, like preparing for watching your wife.
Almost wife, right?
Right.
That's all. I think for me, again, digging deeper into that culture and those times, that was a lot for him. Can you imagine the pressure that he was feeling from the men in the community supporting her?
Right.
You support her in this time, where you're given permission. Other people are going to wonder, I'm sure he heard that. For him to be able to stay strong and do what he was called to do in the presence of a culture that was probably saying something very different, encouraging something very different. I'm not a man, but I can feel like we can identify with him because in our culture, people would have us to say, believe, and do differently than what we know we are called to do.
Right.
To have that strength, that humility, regardless of what you think about me, I'm doing what I know is right by my Lord, right?
Right.
I think we can learn a lot from him.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think just the beauty and knowing how often they must have had to turn to the Lord and just say, we have nothing. We have no idea what you're doing. We have no idea where we're going or what we're going to end up. Exactly.
That's why I'm here.
Right.
When you're weak, I'm the guy. Thank you. It's again, what do you do with that weakness, that fear, that confusion? Go back to the one that created you. He knows.
Yes, indeed.
You're not hiding anything from him. He knows. And Joseph's humility. We always talk about Mary. Mary gets a lot of attention. But his humility, he's okay to stand in the background and play his role. It's inspiring to me too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, like, there is such a role of like provider and protector, like keeping Mary safe and taking on the role of Jesus's adopted father and all of these things that Joseph is going to be and going to teach the Lord. Like all of those things weighing on him on this journey, and preparing for all of those things in his heart and like physically. I think that there is just such a strength there too.
As a parent, I kind of get tickled because I think like Mary fussing. Jesus is a toddler. You know what I mean? Like, don't touch that. Or Joseph trying to teach him the carpenter trade and have a day. I wonder how that felt. I wonder in their mind, they're like,
yeah,
it's kind of crazy.
Must have been crazy. So yeah, as we reflect on Mary and Joseph's experience of just like unexpected and things come in and not really sure how things are going to play out, the unknown, and the struggle that must have been. Is there a place in your own life where you can relate to that?
100%. And this is just a true, when I speak of this, I'm truly humbled at God's faithfulness. I always wanted to have a big family. I thought I would have a big family. My whole life had been very planned out. And then it didn't appear that was going to happen. And so I kind of given up on the idea of how I thought things were going to be. I became very self-absorbed. I very much became living for myself, living for my world, for what I thought the world was going to be or should be. And then in that period of time, through failures and trials and failures, it was there that I encountered the Lord in a way that I never thought I would, with becoming pregnant with Vivian. And it was at that moment, that surrender. I can tell you, sitting in Maria Immaculata Church during Liturgy of the Eucharist, how many Sundays did the Lord encounter me? When I tell you he spoke to me so loudly, it was the most comforting, peaceful time in the most chaotic time of my life. I didn't want to show up because it was embarrassing, because I was tearful, and I was going through these internal struggles that nobody even knew about at the time. But I kept showing up because it was this pull and this tug. And every time I went, despite the tears and all the feelings, there was a peace, and he was just working it all out. He was just working it all out. All I did was cry. He did all the work. I just showed up. When baby number 3, and then 10 months later, baby number 4 came into play, I can tell you physically brought to my knees of the faithfulness of the Lord. And when I tell you scared, I'm going to tell you there's a difference between being a young mom, planned out everything, you've read every book, you have everything monogrammed, I mean, this is how it's going to be, to out of left field, essentially, and you're blessed with 2 more. It was in that moment that I surrendered my parenthood, my motherhood, my Lord, you're going to have to drive this boat because I can't even get my feet on the ground. When I tell you he showed up, golly, did he show up?
Praise God.
He showed up in ways that he has used this experience in my life to speak to more people and allowed me to be so much more relatable and not worried about what we talked earlier about all the extra, all that. I didn't have time to be worried about the extra. I was in survival mode. Like, how am I going to do this? What am I going to do? It has been beautiful every step of the way, every part of it. Not easy. I never will say that. It has been beautiful every step of the way. As we prepare for the things that I thought were such big deals before. Wow. I was focused on such the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Such the wrong thing. An example, in our house for Christmas, our most exciting thing right now is the wreath, the Advent wreath, and my little ones. We have like 6 nativity scenes, and I'm going to tell you, they're all mismatched. We have like 6 wise men over here, 2 over there. But the idea that it's such a central part of our house and what Christmas is about makes my mom heart like I feel like I'm doing this right.
Yeah.
In the past, I've had the perfect tree. It's all been very perfectly matched, and that's beautiful, and it's that's great. But now, my tree is all handmade decoration. Again, my nativity scenes are exactly what the kids would want them to be. But I knew that childlike faith that they have, they're encountering the Lord every time they're putting those pieces out. Every time we're lighting a candle on the wreath, It's, God is faithful. And there can be times in our life when you are scared to death. But that fear is not from him. He is a God of peace. And when we acknowledge that fear and surrender that circumstance and let him work, I can tell you from personal experience, that's when the transformation happens. Yeah. Don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That is when it starts. You just have to surrender. Simple, 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 but hard.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
At the same time.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, I think, just to point back to the fact that it's not what you might have expected,
but exactly what you needed.
Exactly what you needed.
Exactly what you needed.
And exactly what the world needed. Like if we look at the nativity and like the chaos that surrounds it and the circumstances that surround it, like is exactly what we needed to be able to relate to the Lord in the way that we can, and to be able to like approach him in the way that we can,
right,
because of his humility and because of his poverty.
Right.
It makes him, I don't know, like attainable. Yeah. Not his person, but like to be in a relationship with him. That makes him attainable.
Right.
And it makes him human.
Anything. Don't bring me anything. Just bring me you. Just show up with a sincere desire to know me. Because I want to know you. I'm desperate to know you. He pursues us so relentlessly. And most I know in my own life, my back was turned. Because I was chasing. What a beautiful time of the year just to say, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop. I'm going to give the Lord this time. And just baby steps. And then you can't get enough. And then you can't stop. And then you're on fire. And then I don't even know what to tell you. Put your seatbelt on. You can be some unexpected things going on, you know.
JP2 always, he used to say that life with Christ is an adventure. I think a wonderful adventure is over his exact words. And I think that that's so true. And I think for Mary and Joseph, like we see that, right? Like life with Christ must have been an adventure for them. Like first-time parents being on that adventure.
Losing your
together.
child.
Right. Yeah.
Just
no small feat. No small feat.
Pressure there.
Right. So I think that, this is just proof of that reality, of that life with Christ is an adventure, and it's always going to look different.
And it's so worth it.
Yeah.
It's so worth it.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing all of those things. I really appreciate it. If you could tell the people watching and listening, if you could give them one piece of advice, what would be your encouragement for them?
What comes to my mind is just come. That's the word that comes, that just keeps wanting to come off my tongue, so I'll say it. Just come. Don't allow your perceived brokenness, your perceived I haven't done enough, your perceived it's too late for me, your perceived, because I keep saying that word because it's our humanness that keeps us there, right? And it's that little voice in our head that makes us believe that we're less than. But I would like to say this. I would like to say, come, make this year different. This year can be different. Make this year different. Just decide that I'm going to embrace my identity as a perfect masterpiece made in the image of the Lord to do wonderful things that were set in place a long time ago. And I'm going to start, it's going to be a birth of me as if we prepare for the birth of Christ. This is going to be my time to give it back to him. And for so long, I think we just hold ourselves back and we feel like we have to present a certain way, we have to look a certain way, do a certain thing. One of my favorite priests, Ever Immaculata, would say, it no matter. You could say you've done this, you've been there, and he would say, it no matter. He loved you, Jamie. It no matter. And I think I share that with my kids all the time. You can tell me all the reasons in the world that you shouldn't, couldn't, don't pursue a relationship with the Lord. And my answer would be, it no matter. He pursues you the same. He wants you the same. Make this year different. Just come. Just come and lay it down. Let him do the work.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For being here with us
awesome.
and for having this conversation with me and with all of us. Just very grateful for your presence here and for all that you shared.
Thank you so much. And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thank you all so much for joining us for this Advent series for the third week of Advent here in the Diocese of Houma-Thibodaux. Thank you again, Jamie, for joining us as well. And we hope to see you next week for our final episode of the series when we finally welcome Christ at Christmas. Thank you so much, and y'all have a blessed day.